Super Bowl I was played on January 15, 1967, and Super Bowl 50 will be played on February 7, 2016. But long before the modern National Football League came into existence, professional football had already begun to take root in the United States, and these long-forgotten teams were part of the beginning of the game we know today. The Akron Pros. The Akron Pros began as the Akron Indians in the Ohio League, a semi-pro league, in 1908. By 1920, the team had been sold to Art Ranney and Frank Need, who renamed the team the Professionals, or Pros, in hopes of creating a winning atmosphere. The earliest version of the NFL, where the Pros played, was not initially segregated, and the Pros had the first black head coach in the NFL, with Fritz Pollard in 1921, and were also the home of Paul Robeson, a football star years before he became known as a singer and actor and civil rights icon. In 1926, the Pros returned to their Indians moniker, eventually folding under financial hardship and ceasing operations in 1927. The Chicago Cardinals. The oldest continually operating NFL franchise isn't the Bears, Packers, or Lions, but the Cardinals, who began as the Chicago Cardinals in 1920. Their beginnings actually stretch back to 1898 as the Racine Normals, but the franchise known as the Cardinals was already up and running when the fledgling NFL started in 1920 as the American Professional Football Association. During their early years, they vied with the Chicago Bears for championships. Like the Akron Pros, the Cardinals also signed players based on talent instead of color, including Duke Slater, who by 1929, though, was the only black player left in the NFL. Original owner Chris O'Brien sold the team to Charles Bidwell in 1933, and the Bidwells still own the Cardinals today, having moved them to St. Louis in 1960, then to Phoenix in 1988, and eventually renaming them the Arizona rather than the Phoenix Cardinals in 1994. The Cincinnati Celts, Reds, and Bengals. When Paul Brown's AFL and the current NFL franchise, the Cincinnati Bengals, began play in 1968, many likely didn't know they were named for a previous Cincinnati Bengals professional football team and that Brown chose the name as a link to that past. The 1937 Bengals were owned by Hal Pennington in the American Football League, which went under after that season. Those Bengals continued as an independent team for a few years before joining the new American Football League, which folded after the 1941 season. Cincinnati's professional football ties weren't just with Bengals, though. The Cincinnati Celts were active in the Ohio League with the Akron Pros in 1920, though they were in reality a semi-pro team made up mostly of Miami University players with no home stadium, playing all of their games as road games. Another Cincinnati team was the Reds, part of the NFL in 1933 and 34, playing their home games at the baseball team's home, Crosley Field. The Cleveland Panthers and Los Angeles Buccaneers. The Carolina Panthers, NFC champions and headed toward Super Bowl 50, weren't the first Panthers in professional football. That distinction belongs to the Cleveland Panthers from 1926. Finishing that season at 3-2 and as one of only two AFL teams to average over 12 points per game, those Panthers came to an ignominious ending, defeating the Los Angeles Wildcats 6-0, but with less than 1,000 fans in attendance. It would be their final game. Another recycled team mascot or name is the Buccaneers. Tampa, Florida has had the Tampa Bay Buccaneers since 1976, and they won Super Bowl 37. But the first Bucs to sail in professional football hailed from Los Angeles in 1926. Perhaps they were the Bucs of Lake Michigan because they were another traveling team and from LA in name only, operating out of Chicago, but with players from California colleges making up the roster. Travel issues and not having a home stadium eventually killed the team. They ended with some exhibition games in 1927, including a 17-0 loss in their final game. Oddly, the losing continued when Tampa revived the name and lost their first 26 games as a franchise. The Cleveland Rams. Another long-standing NFL team has its roots near the beginning of modern professional football, the Rams, who began in Cleveland in 1937 by lawyer Homer Marshman and player-coach Damon "Buzz" Wetzel. The Rams were so named because it was short and fit easily into a newspaper headline. The team struggled through their early years and during World War II, but won the NFL championship in 1945, defeating the Washington Redskins 15-14. A month after winning that title, the team moved the Rams to Los Angeles due to financial issues and poor attendance, also possibly due to competition from the All-American Football Conference's Cleveland Browns, who made it a point to fill their roster with local talent that would draw higher attendance numbers. The Rams would stay in LA for almost 50 years before moving to St. Louis in 1995, though they're currently gearing up to move back to LA for the 2017 season.